My best friend and I have always wanted to go camping during a snowstorm, or at least during the winter. We both spoke to our spouses and scheduled a weekend trip. We were both so excited to get away into the woods without our kids and wives. Just the two of us, like when we were in high school. I packed up my small tent, sleeping bag, flashlight, and some food and threw them in my SUV. When I got to his house, I realized I was underpacked. I mean, it's supposed to snow like 4 to 6 inches. Not much, but for my first time winter camping. No big deal. He had a bigger tent with separate rooms. I'll bunk with him. When we got to our spot, it was perfect. Dead-end conservation road and no other campers. We set up, got a fire going, and started fishing before we knew it. The sun went down and it was pitch black, and you could only see by the fire. By about 10 p.m., we were starting to wind down, and we were drinking a few beers, and I was shining my flashlight around in the trees, and that's when I saw the first thing that made me a little nervous. I saw a glow of eyes in the ground. Not in the trees, but on the ground, about 50 feet away across the gravel road. I mentioned it to him, and we chalked it up to maybe a raccoon or possum, something like that. We brushed it off and went to the tent to turn in for the night. About an hour later, we were almost asleep, and we heard something big in the tree line right by our tent. Mind you, we are both hunters. We know what a deer or coyote sounds like, and this was big. We heard it crushing leaves faster and faster until it went quiet. My best friend decided he had to pee, so he went out of the tent first, and then I followed for what you could call backup. Not that I was much help. We only had one gun. When he got out there, he went to the closest tree, did his business, and I was watching our back. About 5 seconds after he zipped up, we heard leaves crushing again, and we got so quiet I could hear my heart beating in my ears. Then the loudest sound I've heard my whole life. It was a mixture of gravel popping, and the only way I can explain it was a foreign sound. The Amish were hunting. I swear to you, a whole Amish horse and buggy came out of the woods behind us, where we heard the leaves crunching at, and it made the loudest sound in that quiet little cul-de-sac style gravel area. We both jumped when we heard it and thought we were getting chased or something. That's not where the night ends, though. After being scared awake by the Amish, we try to calm down and go back to the tent. When we lay down, he is in his room of the tent, and I'm in mine with the door open, because it's about 15 degrees, and the snow is starting to blow in later than expected. By now, it's pitch black. The fire went out, the Amish went home, and we only have our gas heater going, making a little sound. I hear him starting to breathe heavier, letting me know he is asleep. And then I hear more leaves crunching next to our tent. I mean right by his window, in the gate at which the steps were sounded like a human walking, and not a deer, possum, rabbit, or anything I could think of. I look over and I see my friend's eyes wide open, and then he cuts a look at me that just screams, "Did you hear that?" And then I give him a nod, saying, "Yep, I heard that." The footsteps are walking around the tent, and then whatever was walking outside brushed up against the tent, making that sh-t sound against the nylon-thin tent. That one act made me go from feeling safe in that tent to making me realize just how fragile and easily someone can cut through it. We once again sat there in stunned silence, with shaky breath and heartbeats in our ears, trying not to make a sound. We sat there for what seemed like an hour or two as this thing circled our tent. We heard as it walked on the gravel, because even then it made loud crunching sounds of gravel under its feet with every step it took. Finally it went away, and we could breathe a sigh of relief. When we got up the next morning, it was cloudy and still lightly snowing, but there was the forecasted 6 inches of snow, and not a single footprint we could see. We packed up the tent and supplies and tore ass home. There's a dispersed campground in Cougar, Washington. I won't say which turn off it is from the main road, because it may be very dangerous to camp in. Me and my family used to camp there all the time growing up. It was perfect to ride quads around, and just an awesome place to get away to. Me being 26 now, I decided to go back to revisit childhood memories, coming up on the turnoff. It was blocked off by a fence, so I parked and packed down the trail, walked through a small stream, and made it to the long dirt road that lead to the camp spots. Seems like people hadn't been there in years. Everything was so overgrown. The road signs were dirty, chipped, and rusty. I walked for at least an hour until I found a campsite that wasn't overgrown, right next to the water near the end of the trail actually, and I set up camp. The next step was the fire dot. I looked around for pieces of wood, twigs, and anything dry that could burn well for a good while, and thank God I was looking at the ground. If not, I might have stepped in a set bear trap. I just stuck a branch in it, snapping it closed because I didn't want another camper to step in it. That would have sucked for me and for anybody that far out in the wilderness. After gathering a good amount of fire fuel, I moved it all back to my campsite and started making a fire. The night was calm, the fire crackling and dancing across the darkness just behind the bushes and trees. The faint sound of the water rushing, stars in the sky. It was truly a perfect night. I sat out there for hours. It must have been 2 to 3 a.m. when I decided to throw the rest of the wood on the fire and hunker down for the night. I crawled into my tent ready for a peaceful sleep. I fell asleep fairly fast and only got about an hour of sleep because a blood-curdling scream woke me up, and I wasn't sure that I actually heard that. I was groggy, but still on high alert. I can only compare the scream to a death whistle looking back now. I unzipped my tent and just stared out into the early morning, dark blue light, the fire smoldering, listening intently. It was quiet aside from the birds chirping and the water in the distance. I put my shoes on and crawled toward the tent door to peek my head out and look around. Nothing, just the woods. Reaching my hand forward, I felt cold metal and looked down. The trap I had set off yesterday was now just below my handset and ready to bite into me. What the fuck? Who the fuck? I thought. I hope anyone would have the flight instinct to get the hell out of there after seeing that. Prank or not, I grabbed my car keys, my wallet, and phone, and immediately started to leave up the road. A little faster than when I had came down, occasionally looking around to make sure I wasn't being followed. I eventually made it to the small creek and crossed it. My car was in sight, so I started to speed up. 40 feet away from the road, I heard heavy splashing in the creek behind me. I turned back and saw a middle-aged, rugged man who looked like he was on meth, holding a knife, wide-eyed and trudging through the creek at me thigh-deep. He was muttering something and seemed as if he was looking through me. I didn't waste any fucking time after that. I ran as fast as I could the rest of the way, scratched myself pretty good getting around the fence. I didn't fumble my car keys either. I was on point. Turning on my car and looking into the woods, the man was now sprinting towards the fence and screaming at me. Just as I take off, he aggressively pushed through the small fence opening, stumbling onto the road. I looked in my rearview mirror at him as he stood up and chased after my car. He followed even up to the point where I bent around a corner. I notified the police, and they said they'd check it out. I gave them everything I knew, told them where they could find my campsite, what happened, everything. If you do live in Cougar and decide to go camping in those backwoods, don't. I will never go camping again, and I think I might even move as far away from this place as possible. I went on a camping trip with my mates a couple of weeks ago, and I will never step foot in that forest again. We and my friends planned a camping trip, not a hunting trip or anything, but 2 of my friends brought their hunting rifles and planned to go hunting for a couple of hours if they got the chance. I'd always wanted to hunt, but I'd never had the time to do a decent length trip. When I told one of my hunting friends this, he said he'd bring his crappy old hunting rifle for me. We didn't set up camp till about 6 p.m. Me and 3 of my friends were ready to eat and go to bed. My 2 hunting friends said they would eat and go out hunting. We ate, and by about 7 p.m. we were tidying up and setting up sleeping bags. We had a 7-man tent, and there were 5 of us, so there was lots of space. I decided to stay in and go hunting next time they went out. My 2 hunting friends went out, and me and my 2 other mates stayed in the tent and talked for about 2 hours before going to sleep. As we were falling asleep, we heard sprinting footsteps coming towards us. We all shot up and jumped out of our sleeping bags. "Guys!" It was one of our friends who went out. "Open the tent." I unzipped the tent, and they practically dove in. They gulped down some water and breathed hard before getting words out. "We finished shooting as it got dark," started one of my friends. John had just packed up his rifle, and I was having a last scout to see if I could see anything, and I saw a deer. It had glowing red eyes staring right down my scope. I shot and nothing happened. Then it just ran at us, So legged it described my friend in a panic. "John, did you see it too?" I asked John. "I didn't see it until it started running at us. I didn't see a deer form, just the red eyes coming towards us," he replied. "I left my rifle there. We'll have to go back for it tomorrow," said my other friend. "We'll all go back tomorrow," said one of my friends who stayed in the tent. We managed to sleep in the end, and the next morning we started walking to where they went hunting. We found my friend's rifle in one piece. He picked it up and unloaded it. "Thank Christ," he said, putting the unused bullets in his pocket. What he didn't notice was an engraving in the butt. "Look at the butt," I said. My friend held the rifle out and looked at the butt. It was a carving of two people, one standing up with a rifle bag on his back, and one lying down, still looking down his rifle scope. "That's us," said John. "What?" replied my other hunting friend. "I can only imagine that's what we would have looked like." At about 1 p.m., John suggested we go hunting before sunset, so we're a little less on edge. We did about an hour's hunting before coming back and spending the rest of the day and night with our friends. We had a fun night of drinking and talking before going to sleep. Our plans for the next day were to have breakfast, pack up our things, and the tent, eat lunch in the forest. Depending on the time we left, if we were ready too early, we'd stop somewhere on the way home. We had our tent packed up and ready to go. It was 11:30 a.m. and we were all ready. We decided to stop somewhere on the way home to get something to eat. We began our 1-hour walk to the car. We were about halfway to the car when we heard a man scream in the distance. No further than 100 meters into the brush. We all stopped dead. I said we needed to go check it out, and both my hunting friends agreed. I was given the crappy hunting rifle, and we ran forward towards the scream. We reached roughly where the scream came from. There were bloody, torn clothes everywhere, but nothing else. I picked up the clothes and looked at them. We were completely spooked. I told my friends I couldn't see anything else, and neither could they. Suddenly, we heard the very recognizable sound of our two other friends screaming. We sprinted back, shouting and crying their names, doing our best to not trip up. We made it back to the path. Our bags were strewn about everywhere. Our friends were gone. We looked around and couldn't see anything. Nobody. We came back to the bags. We were all near tears. We sat down for about 5 minutes trying to think about what to do. Again, I heard one of my disappeared friends screaming towards where we had set up camp. My eyes shot towards it. The first thing I saw was a pair of red eyes bolting directly at me. It was only a second later I realized it was a deer with red eyes. Me and my two friends bolted to the car. After about 5 minutes, it seemed to have disappeared. We got to the car and went back to my house to stay there for the rest of the day and the night. We reported our friends missing and the bloody torn clothes to the police. They haven't been found. I'm beginning to think they won't be.